Welcome, everybody. Hi, this is the Still in the Game podcast, the most anticipated podcast series that has ever been recorded. I'm Roger Smith with VYPE, and glad to have you with us. And our first guest ever is my good friend Shane Brown. And he may be a guy that you look at him, you don't know who that is, but maybe when you hear his voice, you'll know who he is. Welcome in, Shane. And how are you doing here as we are on the threshold of summer?
Man, I tell you, I'm doing well. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. It's my day job as a public school teacher. Just wrapped up the school year. So, man, I'm living the dream now. It's good in late May to be a teacher, for sure.
And he is a public school teacher in Pasadena. And one of the reasons that I chose him to be our very first guest on the Still in the Game podcast series is we know each other very well. The kind of friendship where you take care of each other's pets when the other person goes on vacation. You mow the other person's grass when the other goes on vacation. So first of all, Shane, I'm going to tell everybody what your main current claim to fame is, and that is he is the public address announcer at Constellation Field whenever the Sugarland Space Cowboys are playing baseball. And we'll get into that. But tell us about your heritage. I know you're very proud to be from the Bluegrass State.
Yeah, I was raised in Kentucky. My wife, Stacy, is from West Virginia. We both grew up in that area. And then in the early 90s, we moved down to Houston. Both got teaching jobs at Westbury Christian School. Thought we might be here, 3 or 4 years, moved back to the homeland, fell in love with Houston. And with the exception of 2 years, we've been here ever since and absolutely love it.
And your wife, Stacy, I'm just kind of wondering, I might have a question about this. What time of year was it, first of all, when you met each other, and what time of year was it when you kind of got serious?
Well, we knew each other in junior college, but we never really kind of hung out. And we both started working at Christian youth camp in Northern Virginia. And so we would go back every year to work at that camp, and we'd be there for like 6 to 8 weeks. One summer we were driving up and a mutual friend of ours was in the car with me, and Stacy was following behind us, and we were kind of, convoying to Northern Virginia. And Erica Jackson was her name. And she looked at me and she said, "How come you never asked Stacy out?" Well, and I thought about it and did. And then, man, here it is. We got married the day after O.J. Simpson's slow white Bronco chase. So I know exactly when our anniversary is. Keeps me out of trouble because news always reminds us of that date. And then I know the next day is our anniversary. So here it is. It's been perfect.
And on the night of that slow Bronco chase, the Rockets lost Game 5 to the Knicks. But they had to come home and win games 6 and 7. And it was really awesome. So I'll never forget that.
It's special when ESPN does a 30 for 30 about the night before you got married. I'm like, there it is right there. It was great.
But they didn't come to you for it.
No. We were kind of off the script for that, unfortunately.
So who loves you? That would be me.
Yes,
I'm coming to you for an interview.
There you go.
All right. So you are the public address announcer for the Sugarland Space Cowboys, but you were the Skeeters public address announcer from day one. How did you get that job? Because a lot of people were going for it.
Well, it's very interesting. The Skeeters had introduced themselves to the community. I think actually you and I went to the very first fan fest that they had, and they introduced themselves to the community. Well, I did not know this, but they were having open tryouts. And I literally walked in the door one night. Stacy said, "Hey, by the way, I signed you up for this tryout." And so I remember going to Town Square. It was a Saturday morning. They gave us the script to read, like if somebody hit a home run or this ad or what have you. And we would each get up and stand behind a partition. And it was just a microphone, a little stand for your script, and a partition, and you did the reads. And then you stepped out behind the partition, and there were 3 people in the audience. And they asked a couple of questions about us as individuals. And I thought, well, that was fun. Man, yeah, that was a great experience. Well, then they called back and asked me to come back again for a second read. And I went out to Fort Bend Christian Academy, was at the football stadium, did live reads there. I thought, well, that was fun. And that was a great experience. And then they called and asked if I wanted to be the backup PA guy. And I said, sure. And so I was going to do 15, 20 games a year. And then about 3 days later, Tom Gorman, who was my boss, called back and said, "Hey, the guy that we offered the position to has just moved to Dallas. would you like to be the primary PA guy? And I said, well, let me think about it. Yes. And so
took about 0.3 of a second.
Yes, it did. And they've been kind enough to bring me back every year since then. I tell everybody I am the Space Cowboys charity project because they keep allowing me to come back. They're very kind to me.
This is the Still in the Game podcast. This is the very first one. You're a part of history because you're watching this. And we are always presented by Texan Hyundai in Rosenberg. And we're looking forward to the competition coming up in the school year 2026-2027, as we'll be on VYPELCISD.com. The 7 schools of Lamar Consolidated. You've got Foster, Fulshire, George Ranch, Lamar Consolidated, Randall, Terry, and Tomas. And we'll be doing video streams, all free to watch, no pay-per-view on VYPELCISD.com. So let's fast forward with your work with the Skeeters. Well, when they became the Sugarland Space Cowboys and it was affiliated baseball tied to the Astros, you probably had some thoughts in your head that, all right, well, they're going to come in and they'll bring in their own people. And that's probably it for me, but it wasn't.
No, it was very interesting because really that's kind of the first thought. And everybody said that was tied to the organization. Well, what does that mean for me as an individual? So, it was very amazing and actually surprising at how smooth the transition was. There was some changes in personnel, but overall everything stayed consistent. And I remember that at one point Tyler Stam, who became the general manager when all of that happened, he told me that they asked if they had a PA guy in mind, and he said we already have our guy in place, and he vouched for me, and I've always been appreciative of that.
Well, I've always been very happy for Tyler Stam. With all his hard work with the Skeeters, he might have thought that he was out the door, but no, they not only kept him with the Space Cowboys, but they elevated him to the top spot.
To tell you how old I am, I remember when Tyler Stam came in the middle of the first season as an intern, and he stayed on, worked into sales, kept moving up the food chain, if you will. An extremely strong work ethic. And a great guy to be able to get to know. And it just proved positive that, if you have hard work, dedication, and discipline, you really can do whatever you want to do to be able to achieve. And he's the epitome of that because we've seen that from intern to general manager. That's pretty impressive.
And he's an Aggie as well. So before we take a break, I want to tell you about so many great things going on here at Texan Hyundai. First of all, they are the official partner of World Cup, FIFA World Cup 2026. So you're going to see Hyundai's name all over that. But right here at Texan Hyundai in Rosenberg, you get 0% annual percentage rate financing for 72 months on select models, plus $3,000 bonus cash. That's great. And by the way, Shane and his family own multiple Texan Hyundais that I bought right
Yeah,
here.
I tell you what, everyone in our household is a Hyundai. And, long story short, I fell in love with one when I got it as a rental car. It was a Sonata. The legroom, the space was incredible. Went and bought a Sonata in 2011, and everyone in our house now has Sonatas. And as a matter of fact, I was just mentioning before we started the podcast, 3 of our last 4 Hyundais that we purchased have been from right here, and including one that we got just last month. Absolutely been pleased with the service that we get here. I mean, Hyundai is a great product, but to get the kind of service that you get here on top of that to me is a win-win if you're looking for a new vehicle.
And Sonatas are great, but don't sleep on the Santa Cruz pickup. I have my eye on one of those. I think it would be great to have one of those. And also, just know that if you like the Palisade gives you a free lifetime warranty, whether it's the traditional internal combustion engine, the hybrid, or the electric. Palisade, through its lifetime, they got a warranty on it the whole time. You can't beat that. We'll take a break and be back on the Still in the Game podcast with Shane Brown right after this.
It starts with learning the value of saving. We are here when dreams start to take flight. We're here when it's time to build your future. And we're here when it's time to enjoy the moments you've worked for. For every step, for every moment, we are here. Your credit union for life. Brazos Valley Schools Credit Union. Educate, partner, serve.
Welcome back to the Still in the Game podcast. I'm Roger Smith. Our guest is Shane Brown, and we were talking about being the public address announcer for the Skeeters and the Space Cowboys. And let's talk about some of the many great players you've been able to introduce and different things that are highlights of your, 14 years there?
Yeah, I think it's something like that. When you start to do math, man, that says you've been there for a minute, No, I tell you, it's been a great experience. I mean, I grew up a Cincinnati Reds fan, so I mean, I've always loved baseball, and to be able to work in the game it's for me. I feel very, very fortunate, and I've had a chance to really meet some players like you alluded to. That very first year, being able to announce Roger Clemens in a baseball game, and watching him and Kobe, being a pitcher catcher combo has just been phenomenal. Then you think when the Astros roll in, I've had a chance to see Yordan Alvarez, Jose Altuve, Alex Bregman. Last night Josh Hader pitched. I've been able to call names like Justin Verlander, Zach Greinke, and I just feel very fortunate to kind of be a part of that. And it's such a cool vibe. And I will say this, if anybody's ever been to Constellation Field, I know you can attest to this. It's a great environment for baseball. It's a great, place to bring your kids. It's a great family-friendly environment because you get to be so close to the players and see them, in a different light that you don't get at Dyken Park. And so to be able to be a part of that is really cool because I get to be a part of the experience, but to see families be a part of that as well, it's a cool thing to be a part of.
And it was really, I think it speaks well about the planning of Constellation Field, because when the Space Cowboys came in, they really didn't have to reconfigure anything except the guts of the stadium down there in the clubhouses.
Right. They did a lot of remodeling down there, to kind of upgrade everything. But in terms of what you see in the general public, just aesthetics. And really, that was about it, because the ballpark is such a great place. And for those of you, if you haven't been there, you really ought to take the opportunity to do that. Bring your kids. The great thing about it is we've got a playground, we've got a splash pad, we've got a grassland. And the way they've set it up is that you can be anywhere in the ballpark and be able to see the game. So your kids could be right behind you on the playground having a great time. You're sitting right there watching the game while you're keeping an eye on them. It's the perfect environment for families.
Well, when I think about one of the things that, by the way, this is it's live. It is plausibly live, and that's why we have that in there where we don't need to edit that out.
It's a car dealership. You're going to hear car things.
That's right.
That's exactly right.
And these cars are so good that people are trying to swipe them. Just kidding. That's not happening. It was a butt alarm. That's what it was. So when we talk about the evolution of our local minor league franchise, something that was significant to me and that I didn't really fully understand until later, I guess it was the third year of the Skeeters, they decided that they were going to have an affiliation with ESPN and be on ESPN3.com back when streaming was a new thing. Mm-hmm. And I think it all started because they signed the basketball star, the retired basketball star, Tracy McGrady. How did that all unfold?
Yeah, the great thing about signing Tracy McGrady, he always wanted to play baseball. He always wanted to give it a go. He had already been done with his NBA career. And to be very honest with you, a lot of people thought it was a joke. It was just kind of a circus act. I mean, I'm going to tell you, T-Mac is a God-gifted athlete. And I mean, he pitched well. I mean, he wasn't going to dominate players, but it was very obvious that he had the natural talent to be able to go out there and throw strikes. And I thought he did fairly well. And he literally did it until he didn't want to do it anymore.
Well, I'm going to play a little bit of a devil's advocate role here. I think he only participated in 4 games, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's all it was.
I know he had done several. He actually pitched in the All-Star game that they hosted that year at Constellation. But you're right. I mean, he was only there for about a cup of coffee. But I think it was one thing where Tracy McGrady wanted to come out and prove that he could do it. He definitely was very serviceable. And then when he was done, he was done.
Okay. Here's another thing that I I believe happened, and if I am incorrect, you can let me know, but once ESPN saw that news release they put out and said Tracy McGrady is signing with us, they said, we're going to make that kind of the pilot program to put on ESPN3.com. And anybody who wants to see these games can see them. And I was thinking, that's great for the Skeeters because they're going to get a little extra cash for that, and it'll help them be more visible.
Well,
as it turns out, they had to pay ESPN.
Correct.
And it had to be a big burden financially on the organization.
Well, I mean, obviously, it's advertising is really what it is, and you got to pay to advertise and get your product out there. And I give them credit for really trying to be on the cutting edge and do those things and trying to get their name out and be visible. You go back to when Roger Clemens pitched. Well, CBS Morning News was at Constellation Field that morning, and there he is at 7:00 in the morning giving an interview. We're on national TV. I mean, if you remember, it was ESPN News, I think it was, that actually broadcast the game live.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it was a great marketing ploy by the ownership, and you can't fault them for going out there and doing the best they can to market the product.
And I got to participate in 2013. Doing the 3 middle innings on radio. But then when 2014 came along and they signed Tracy McGrady, ESPN had some people in Bristol calling the shots, and they said, okay, we only want announcers with major league experience. So I was out the door because Brett Dolan
mm-hmm.
and there's another guy, Greg something, that used to be with Home Sports Entertainment. There were several announcers in the greater Houston area who didn't really have anything to do at that time. So they called on them. And then I decided to call my old friend Kern Tips. Do you remember Kern
yeah,
Tips?
I do.
Who showed up on Turn Back the Clock Night.
Yeah.
Tell me all about Kern.
Well, I know that he had a big microphone, and he would stand out in the audience and go old school when he was announcing the batters. But he was very smart in his technology that he would actually duct tape a live microphone into the megaphone, and it made him sound like he could project his voice exponentially louder. It was very well done.
And I heard him very well, and so that I was able to kind of come up with an impression. So I want to try my Kern Tips.
Might as well.
Now betting for your Skeeters, the left fielder, Ryan Langerhans. Something like that, like an old newsreel voiceover guy.
Somebody from New York or New Jersey, I would think. Huh?
Yeah.
I mean, going northeastern.
And Kern wore a little hat, and he also had one of those useless elastic around the bicep things, and he wore a little bow tie.
They're accessorizing.
I just don't know what that is for. I always wondered.
Right.
All right, but God rest his soul, Kern Tips has passed away. But, life goes on, and you can get yourself a all new 2026 Hyundai Elantra SE for less than $22,000. That is amazing. So they have that as one of their many deals. And how about a Santa Fe SE? That's about $35,500. So great deals here at Texas Hyundai in Rosenberg.
And I do want to throw something else on that. As we mentioned, our entire family has Hyundais. I would tell you 2 things that I think people really ought to consider if they're looking for a new vehicle. The warranty that you're going to get on this, on a Hyundai, is incredible. No one else is doing what they're doing. They're the only game in the business.
Yeah.
And I think, you get in, you get the details, you're going to be very impressed with it. The one thing that I really like, and I was determined to put my children in Hyundais, is the crash safety ratings that they have. I mean, they're some of the best. And I actually have a friend of mine in Kentucky who owned a Hyundai Sonata and was involved in a very violent traffic accident with a guy who ran a red light. He was in a Hyundai Sonata, and he swears that he's on this planet today because of the crash safety that car presents. I'm telling you, those are 2 things that you cannot put a price tag on, and it's always something to consider when you're looking for a new vehicle.
All right. And we are taping this. We want this to be what we call evergreen. We want this to be informative and entertaining on the Still in the Game podcast, even if you listen to this in December of 2026. But the thing is, you can always come to Texas Hyundai, and whatever the deals are, there are some really good ones. So don't forget that. Also, don't forget that on August the 18th, our volleyball video stream coverage starts. We're probably going to be following the Fulshear Chargers in their very first match.
That'll be awesome.
All right, let's take a break, and we'll be back with more on the Still in the Game podcast with Shane Brown.
Hi, this is Larry Poston with Above All Roofing and Construction. We've been proudly serving our community for 27 years. As a Christian-owned and operated company and as an ordained minister, I believe in treating every homeowner's roof like it's my own. What sets us apart is the attention to detail that we put into every roof. Every roof we install includes 7 free upgrades for lasting protection. We put on synthetic felt with plastic cap ring shank nails. We put on some of the best shingles in town, the GIF Timberline Lifetime HDZ Class 3 rated shingle. We install Storm Guard in all the valleys, around all the walls, and around all the vents. We install ridge vents everywhere we possibly can. Every project is backed by a 7-year labor warranty, and our Silver Pledge warranty through the manufacturer gives you total peace of mind. So if you want craftsmanship built on faith, family, and integrity, call Above All Roofing and Construction, where we put quality and care above all.
Welcome back to the Still in the Game podcast with Shane Brown, and we've been talking about his talents as a public address announcer in ballparks, in baseball, but he's been a coach for a long time, no longer coaching, retired from coaching, still a public school teacher, but it started at Westbury Christian. So let's go chronologically. How many years at Westbury Christian?
Yeah, so it started at Westbury Christian in 93 and was there 4 years. I started out as the boys' assistant coach and was the boys' assistant for 2 years. The girls' head coach left. And I'll never forget the athletic director, offered me the position to be the head coach and having the opportunity to do that, and moved over to the women's side of the game. And for the next 23 years, Nana had the opportunity to coach women's basketball, and it was a phenomenal experience for me. 4 years at Westbury Christian. Fortunate enough to win a state title my second year as the head coach there.
Yes.
And
TAPS.
Yep, TAPS. We were TAPS 4A at that time, the largest division.
That's for those of you in Rio Linda, that is the Texas Association of Private and Parochial Schools.
Yep.
Do go on.
No. It was a great run there for 4 years.
All right. So I know that Rice is very close to your heart. It's very close to my heart because my mom was one of the very first female students at Rice way back in the 1940s, believe it or not.
Well, first of all, that means she's extremely intelligent. Because I told people that, I left Westbury Christian and became an assistant coach with the women's program here. Rice is kind enough to let me work here, but they would never let me go to school there because I'm not that intelligent. So kudos to her.
All right. Well, don't beat yourself up over that. But I know that Rice is very important to you because to this day, your personal email has Lady Owls in it.
Yeah, I created the email address when I was an assistant there. And it stuck with me. And, and even to this day, I still work with Rice. I do PA for their men's and women's basketball programs. So it's really kind of cool that I get to sit on the sideline. I got a courtside seat and I get to watch the coaches stress out. Win or lose, I get to go home. I don't have to watch film. I don't have to worry about it. Yeah, I'm telling you, I'm living my best life when it comes to that stuff.
Well, speaking of watching coaches stress out, I'm fascinated by coaches and watching the different styles and how they interact with their players and how they motivate them. I just never get tired of kind of seeing the different styles and comparing them. So you moved on to what was then Houston Baptist, and Shane coached in the Final Four twice. He took the Lady Huskies in 03 and 04, I believe. And were you eliminated in the semifinals by Oklahoma City?
Oklahoma City, yeah, both years.
Okay. And I got those years right?
04, 05.
04, 05.
Yeah.
So one thing that coaching is evolving. There are things that coaches used to do, really harsh taskmaster things, intense, coaching players hard, that I'm not going to say it's extinct, but it's just not as common as it once was. And sometimes coaches are losing their jobs because they're too harsh or whatever. So can you give us some perspective on that? Because you coached those girls hard.
Yeah, I did. And I got to be very honest with you, unapologetic for that. Never at any time were kids berated, cussed out, or anything of that nature. But no, they were going to be pushed and they were going to be coached. And the young ladies that came into our program, they knew that. But the whole purpose of everything that we were doing is we wanted our kids to be able to enjoy a level of success that they've never been able to achieve and something that they dreamed about. And I'll be honest with you, I think the record that we had there speaks for itself. Now, I mean, at the same time, we had to have players that bought into it, and we did, and we were very fortunate to have that. But with that being said, yeah, we got after it, and I was a very intense coach, but I love the players that played for us, and I wanted nothing more than the best for them. And I think that they would tell you that to a person. You take a look at today's game, and I think you're right. That type of coach is almost an anomaly. But take a look at a coach Tom Izzo in Michigan State. You take a look at a coach Dan Hurley at UConn. Man, those two guys, they'll get all in your business, and they're not even gonna take a moment to even to back away. But every one of those players love them. To this day, you can still hear all of these other coaches or all these other players talk about Tom Izzo and how much they love it and what Tom Izzo did for them. I think that the style of coaching has changed. I think the type of athlete has changed. But with that being said, I do think that there are those coaches out there who still coach with that level of intensity that someone might call old school. But I think the players really know that deep down, those coaches want the best for them, and it's done with all sincerity out of love for the players that play for them. And that was my philosophy, and I think that's their philosophy, and I think that's why they're as successful as they are.
And your beloved Rice University has an awesome coach now, lifting that team to great heights. They had an incredible win streak in this past season, but you kind of observe some of the things that she does and some of the rituals and the interaction with the girls, and you kind of think, I couldn't do that.
Oh, absolutely. Because again, I'm cut from a different cord of wood as a coach. I'm just extremely competitive. My kids will tell you that. I never let them win Monopoly growing up. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm one of these people. When I play, I'm there to be as successful as I can, right? Lindsay Edmonds is probably one of the most underrated coaches in the women's game. And I think if anybody gets a chance to watch her teams play, her kids will run through a wall for her. They love her as a coach, but yet the way she coaches, I couldn't do it. I cringe almost when I see it sometimes because she has the special individual handshake with her players as they get ready to play the game and, how she talks to the kids and all those types of things. But with that being said, she's so good with today's athletes that she can reach them in a way that me and a lot of coaches in my generation can never do. She's so good at it. And it's obvious because her players give so much for her. It's really impressive to see.
All right. One thing that I've been working on is doing better teases before we take a break. So Shane Brown, a male coach of women. What college coach might need to be on his way out? We'll be back with that on the Still in the Game podcast on VYPE. You'll be right back.
It starts with learning the value of saving. We are here when dreams start to take flight. We're here when it's time to build your future. And we're here when it's time to enjoy the moments you've worked for. For every step, for every moment, we are here. Your credit union for life. Brazos Valley Schools Credit Union. Educate, partner, serve.
All right, welcome back for our last segment with Shane Brown. And I almost forgot, I should have said this a long time ago. Behind the camera today, Kevin Barnett. We really appreciate his expertise so that we can present our very first episode of the Still in the Game podcast. So Shane Brown, of course, after he was at Houston Baptist, which is now Houston Christian, he went to Pasadena Dobie. How many seasons did you coach there?
Well, there was a quick stint, as alluded to earlier, with the exception of 2 years. We've been in Houston since '93. I left Houston Baptist at that time, and took an assistant coaching job at Colorado State.
That's right. I completely forgot that.
Yeah. So Colorado State for a couple of years. Then we moved back to West Virginia. We thought, well, we'll move back home. So I took a head coaching job at Ohio Valley University, a Division II school there. And after the third night of sub-zero winter, and when Taco Bell is your best Tex-Mex option, we knew then we were moving back to Texas. So then we moved back in 07. Now, so it's ironic. We live, follow me here, we live in Houston. We moved to Fort Collins, Colorado, Parkersburg, West Virginia, back to Houston, and we live a mile and a half from the house we lived in before. So that we made all our rounds to move a mile and a half. But I'm telling you, I'll never forget when we moved back July 13th, 2007. And brother, I could not get enough queso in my system for about the first 6 months.
Well, Lemony Snicket's, that is a series of fortunate events that brought you back. And I guess it was so hurtful to me that I just blotted out of my memory. I forgot that you moved away for a while.
Yeah.
Okay. So you were a male coach of women at the college level, and you went to the Final Four. And, there are still some of the very best women's college programs that have a male coach. We're about to have the Houston Comets back. And back when they started, they won 4 straight WNBA championships with Van Chancellor as their head coach. And so I hear all these rumblings, people saying, Gino Auriemma at UConn, he's just got to go. He's done too many things to embarrass the program. He's disrespected female opposition coaches. But I'm thinking, there's no way he's leaving. And with his record of success, what do you think is going to happen at UConn?
I think Gino can leave whenever Gino's ready to leave. And I think he's earned that right with the success that he's had. That interaction that he had with Dawn Staley and all that stuff, that's kind of Gino being Gino. Now, I don't know him personally. I've never had any direct interactions with him, but I will tell you that there's a little bit of ego there. I'll tell you this quick story. When I was coaching at HBU, I was in Florida recruiting, and they had all the college coaches in this one section of the bleachers because, of course, we weren't allowed to interact with kids, and all the coaches had to have a wristband. And we're all sitting there getting ready to watch a game. Gino walks through the door, but he doesn't have a wristband on. And this lady who's a security guard stops him dead in his tracks, and she will not let him in the gym. And he was hot, and they had to get the gym supervisor over to tell the security guard to let him in and sit down. And we're all snickering, thinking, good. It's about time that he gets humbled a little bit, and that not everybody knows who Gino is. But, the thing is everybody associated with the game does. Why? Because of the success that he's had. Obviously they had a great season last year. He's still able to get great players. They still want to come play for him. So, yeah, that was an unfortunate situation, but I think Gino gets to make that call, and deservedly so.
On that day when he sat down, how long did it take him to kind of be in a congenial way?
He was never congenial to any of us, ever.
Okay.
So, no. But did he sit down and he was no longer like 8 shades of red? Yes.
All right. Well, I just kind of a closing thought. It's not just for coaches, but for everybody in the things that we pursue and the kind of people we want to be. I want to refer to a quote from the pastor at Sugar Grove Church of Christ, Brian Shackman. He came up with something, and it ties right in, as I see it, to really doing what it takes to succeed at the highest level. When you have to coach players hard and you really push them, or you could just have a little bit more relaxed approach and maybe not get as good of results. So Brian came up with this saying, choose your hard. Actually, maybe he borrowed it from someone else, but you think, choose your hard. It is hard to have a losing season year after year and never feel like you have hope of accomplishing anything really special. So it is really hard to totally rework everything that you do in your preparation for seasons and for games so that you can get the great success. Choose your hard. It's hard to accept losing. It is hard to elevate yourself from the abyss of losing and get into winning.
Right.
Can I get an amen?
Well, absolutely. Amen. That's kind of like the Kobe Bryant Mamba mentality. It's the idea of you have to set a standard of what you believe that you want to achieve, and then you have to be willing to be able to go and do what it takes to achieve that. There was a coach way back in the day, and if anybody knows this name, I'm going to be extremely impressed. Abe Lemons.
University of Texas.
Yeah, I tell you what, one time he was, I heard him speak one time at a coaching clinic, and he said, the players were coming in and said, this isn't fun. We're not having any fun. So I sat him down. I said, do you want to be good or do you want to have fun? He goes, we can do either one you want. We can either be good or we can have as much fun as you want. You tell me what you want. And I thought that really resonated. What do you want? And so I think that's true. So I think there's a lot of coaches out there where, they want their players to be able to enjoy a level of success and achievement that they've never been able to get elsewhere outside of the dedication and the discipline and the hard work it takes. And that's why coaches like Gino, Izzo, Hurley, Nick Cronin, you can go down the list of these coaches that coach their players hard. There's a reason why they have a level of success that they do, and they've had it for as long as they've had it. Pat Summitt, you're telling me nobody coached a team harder than Pat Summitt. But I guarantee you those young ladies enjoyed successes that they would have never had to enjoy otherwise in the memories that they have, because that lady coached them the way that she did.
And every one of those coaches that you mentioned has the brass ring at least once. But I'm going to say there is a difference between hasn't and can't. And I'm going to throw something out there for my favorite coach right now in the men's game for sure, Kelvin Sampson of the Houston Cougars. They haven't brought it home yet, right? But one of these years, they are going to be national champions, and that'll be something I can check off my bucket list.
Oh, I truly believe that. I'm telling you, they are extremely well coached. And I'm going to tell you, anybody that watches the game and pays attention, Kelvin Sampson does not play. And it doesn't matter. You could be the best player or the 12th player. He's going to get after you with no question if you do not do what is expected to make your team successful. And that's what he's about. I believe this as a coach. This is my philosophy. I bet Kelvin Sampson would probably back this up. It's not about wins and losses. For me as a coach, it was never about winning the game. I'm telling you, it sounds weird. It was all about how you play on the court. The wins take care of themselves. That the scoreboard is an indicator of your effort on the floor. And that was the big emphasis for us. I couldn't even tell you what my record is. And I couldn't even care. All I cared about was how good of an effort were we going to give on the floor. If we did that, the wins take care of themselves. I'll bet the farm Kelvin Sampson has that exact same philosophy, as well as all the other coaches that I mentioned.
One sweet day, that's going to happen. Thank you so much, Shane.
Thank you.
You and your Space Cowboys zipper top hoodie are, it's not a hoodie, but it's a zipper top. You are welcome here anytime on the Still in the Game podcast. Thanks to Texan Hyundai, thanks to Kevin Barnett, and thanks to you. And just know that we're going to be doing these things at least once a week until I go to heaven. That's what we're going to do. And we're going to be doing Lamar Consolidated ISD Sports throughout the year, always free on video stream and a little bit of web radio. So thank you, Shane, for being with us.
It's been a pleasure.
And God bless all of you. We'll be back very soon with another one on VYPE.